I was watching a conservative speaker talking about microaggressions and the victim mentality on the left, basically identity politics. I covered it, I think, pretty well in my video, The Populist Bomb. Now, I want to weigh in on my thoughts on the topic. I've come to the conclusion that there is a simple explanation for the agenda of the left. While some of the leftist ideas started with a noble groundwork, such as equality for all, etc., the left has been hijacked by a force called victim mentality. We have a failing education system in the U.S. While Republicans want to raise standards, require responsibility, and motivate, the leftists want to lower standards, point fingers, and accept mediocrity. When children do poorly on a standardized test, the kids are the victims of a racist test. When a student athlete graduates high school with a 4th grade reading level, blame the coaching staff and sports institution, not the athletic victim. When the dropout rates begin to soar, don't question the truants or their parents, they're just victims too. We see this phenomenon as well in the business world, with terms like big business, big oil, big tobacco, big auto. We're able to conjure up David versus Goliath scenario, with the poor working class Americans as the little guy, the victim. We treat smokers like they're victims of an unknown danger, a danger unknown to those who have lived under a rock for the last half century, maybe. Big evil fast food chains are killing victims with their fatty foods, but it's not the responsibility of the individual to limit their intake of grease, fries, and junk, is it? The irony was, as in the real life, that David, the small guy, was the victor. Likewise, as a mass, we as a mass control those industries. They don't control us. Think I'm wrong? Gather half the fast food restaurant customers in the country, just half, and boycott the purchase of fast food for a year and see what happens. Ask any big business who stepped in the path of Jesse Jackson just who the victim is. Another irony is that most of these leftists who complain about big business enjoy the fruits of these evil empires. They drive cars, buy houses or rent apartments, eat at restaurants, talk on telephones, watch television, etc. with the products of big business. If these people had to go out and build these items themselves, most wouldn't be able to. The advantages to big business are the economies of scale, and we enjoy them every day in having choices of products from all over the world, lower costs, or simple logistics. Our inability to make a phone call if we had to build the phone and construct the lines to all of our friends and families ourselves. When it comes to social programs, we don't require that those receiving aid that are capable of working actually do something. We just require they show need and blame their situation on others. We don't look to the best way to get them on their feet. We look for the easiest way to distribute a check. After all, the leftists contend it's not the fault of most of these people. They're just victims of society, of bad luck, of big business, whatever. Sure, there are a few truly needy folks, but those are better left served by the local community, not one-size-fits-all national programs. One of the most prevalent areas of victim mentality is the criminal justice system. Long gone are the days where criminals are actually held responsible. Leftists now have created a system that blames society for a serial killer, blames playground bullies for a rapist, blames minimum wage for someone going postal, and blames the dead for putting themselves in the path of a killer. Instead of punishing, taking responsibility, and deterring criminals, leftists excuse, reason, and explain away their behavior. You just need to understand his mind. Or, look at his childhood, become the rallying cries. It's ridiculous. Take the old case of Rodney King. The guy was and continues to be a habitual criminal, on drugs, running from and trying to attack the cops. After a few minutes of forceful restraint, he's immediately cast into heroism, given a multi-million-dollar settlement, and is viewed as the victim, not the low-life criminal thug that he is. When the cops are acquitted of wrongdoing in the case, thousands take to the streets to riot, loot from small businesses, many going under as a result, and destroy billions of dollars of city infrastructure. But who's accountable? That's right, the racist criminal justice system. How about the tax cuts? Instead of the focus being on the true victims of an unfair progressive tax system, the focus instead was on the victims, like our children and grandchildren, who will have to fund this tax cut later, or the poor, who are so oppressed by the rich that they deserve lower tax rates and higher tax rebates. Create victims and you can get their votes. Finally, let's look at America's standing on the world stage. We have the leftists calling our war in Iraq illegal and unjust, making Saddam out to be the victim. We destroyed the Taliban, an evil regime in Afghanistan, and it's "you've just blown the country back to the Stone Ages," which in that country, and I've been there, would be a step up. Untrue, but still, the Taliban were just victims of our empire building. We capture Al-Qaeda members and hold them for questioning, and the left screams abuse, cruel and unusual, and barbaric treatment. Just more victims. Our interests are bombed all over the world, and yet somehow it's the bombers who are justified because they're victims of our foreign policy. Terrorists kill 3,000 of our own, tear down several skyscrapers, destroy 4 airplanes, and slow our economy, but they're the victims because we don't do more for their cause. All in all, it's just simply become the leftist political strategy. If you can create enough victims in the world, you can swoop in as a defender of their cause and gain their votes. It has been a brilliant strategy in that political arena because representatives do just that, represent. The leftists have held a monopoly on victimization for quite some time, and they've become arrogant about it, which is costing them dearly now. Donald Trump. You see, they've carved up so many victim groups that the interest among each group conflicts with the needs of another, and the leftists are finding their hero resources running thin, trying to support so many vast wants and needs. They've fractured society into so many fragments, it's impossible for them to swoop in and save the day when their actions help one group but hurt another. I just watched Bernie Sanders go on about incarcerated felons voting, that voting is some kind of right above and beyond all others. Owning a gun is a right as well. Should we allow them to purchase firearms? We have a 4th and 5th Amendment. Should prisons stop searches of prisoners' cells looking for drugs and weapons? Under the precept of liberty, people have the freedom to move about, come and go as they please. Should we take the walls and barbed wire down from prisons and take the doors off? Bernie Sanders needs to be in a home. He's obviously suffering from dementia. What's worse, the extreme left are jumping on the bandwagon. Harris actually said it's something we should talk about. Okay, I'll talk about it. How about, no. He actually said the Boston bomber has the right to vote. Should we let him buy a gun? Should we start selling guns in the commissary next to the ramen noodles? The left has basically lost its friggin' mind. After you get out, you've paid your debt to society, depending on the crime, obviously. For instance, a murderer forfeits his rights, like his victim, for life. A rapist forfeits his rights, like his victim, for life. Me personally, I'm in favor of capital punishment. Murderers and rapists should be executed publicly. But even if we're not going to do that, they shouldn't get their rights back. They've permanently taken other people's rights. They should lose theirs. Unless you're crazy, of course, and need votes, because your policies suck. I was just going through my Facebook groups and someone posted, best first quarter GDP number in 6 years. Guess we should start panicking. Now, you remember my video talking about debate, who you should and shouldn't debate. Bill here is an example of who you shouldn't. Not only does he pull the race card constantly, I've tried debating him before, but he contradicts himself. As you can see, he's well versed with in-depth, factual, political commentary. Here he is trying to win an argument with an opinion article from CNN. Again, a great debater. Not. Here we see the left's mental problems, or TURD as I like to call it, Trump unacceptance and resistance disorder. Now he constantly posts this one, which he likes to ignore that we already had a trade deficit with China due to unfair trade practices. Now they're actually negotiating. We actually sold them rice. I believe it was Obama that said we would have to get used to 1% GDP, that Trump didn't have a magic wand. Well, abracadabra. Now leftists seem to be all up in arms about deficits after Obama raised our deficit higher than all the presidents before combined. I find that a bit hypocritical. More of him demonstrating his outstanding political correctness. Review my video on the populist bomb. Yes, he's one of those meme guys. Now he's equating an economic boom with George Bush. During Obama's presidency, his failures were Bush's fault. Now that Trump is in office, all the success is Obama's doing. All the while, he's saying the economy sucks. You see, contradicting himself. He does that a lot. Same attempt, same failure. First of all, Obama added over $10 trillion, more than all the previous presidents combined. And of course, the populist bomb has to come into play. If they have to use race to support their argument, they have no argument, just point and laugh.